After an entire decade of Five Nights at Freddy's, there's a lot of lore to unpack that millions of theorists have tried to solve. Although, I think I've actually solved it all. Today is the first part of this mini-series where we're solving the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game from back in 2014, including the biggest question: what year does it take place? Each month will be dedicated to a single game until the big timeline video releasing December 19th at 5 PM UTC. So please subscribe so you don't miss an upload, and for us to hit 300k before the end of the year, like the video and consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy. But in order to figure out which story I'm going to tell there, let's begin solving the timeline here. Although remember, as always, this is just a theory, and my interpretation of the evidence. Even if you disagree, I hope it gives you something new to think about. Since there weren't any planned sequels at the time, the lore of the first game is relatively straightforward, so I'll be using information taken from later games to further expand on all the lore we first learned about within this game. So as we all know, we play as a security guard named Mike Schmidt, who we later learn is really Michael Afton, taking a job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to monitor the location for the week, and protect himself against the main four animatronics: Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny Rabbit, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox, as well as a ghostly fifth animatronic, Golden Freddy. This game and all the other future games take place within the distant town of Hurricane, Utah, and we know this due to the novel trilogy, which, as a side note, this trilogy, the Fazbear Fright series, and the Tales from the Pizzaplex series are all in different timelines to the games, but are stated by creator Scott Cawthon to be reimaginings of the story, while still sharing many familiar elements to the games, to basically help us with the lore. So don't take the books as one-to-one, but instead as clues, hints, and a general baseline for the lore. The first book, The Silver Eyes, explicitly locates the story of FNAF in that very town of Hurricane, at the very beginning, but we know that it carries over to the games too due to the lawsuits you can occasionally get throughout the later game FNAF 6, directly stating, "In the District Court of Utah, 5th Judicial District, Washington County." Not only that, but in an even later game, Security Breach, we specifically hear of an attraction called the Hurricane Hole-in-One, this bucket explicitly showing it visually, further cementing this idea. Then in an even later game, Into the Pit, we see outside of the main protagonist's school what appears to be a flag for Utah to further bring it all together. If you're somehow still not convinced, we read in one of the unused emails in the discontinued FNAF AR game Special Delivery, quote, "Despite the name, hurricanes are actually not the leading cause of death of children in Hurricane, Utah." Although moving on from location, we'll talk more about Mike, the phone guy, and the timeline of FNAF 1 itself later, because for now we learn the main lore of this game through the newspapers that randomly appear as a hallucination in the East Hall corner. We read that 5 children were lured into the back room during their birthday party at an older Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which opened up in 1983, confirmed through Help Wanted's Fazcoin, the random cookbook funnily enough, as well as the new Ticket to Fun book reiterating that fact. Eventually those children were killed, and their dead bodies were put inside the animatronic suits at night, shown with Into the Pit changing from day to night once the kids are killed and the animatronics begin malfunctioning, as well as Pizza Party showing Freddy being stuffed when no one else is in the building at the time, aka at night, leading the children to become missing. Alas, the Missing Children's Incident, MCI for short. That's not all we know about this event though, as we know through the newspapers that this event occurs on the 26th of June, but we later learn it occurs specifically in the year 1985, 2 years after the location first opens, due to the first FNAF book, The Silver Eyes, directly stating that the children went missing 10 years before the story takes place, which is in the year 1995, as well as all the adaptations of Into the Pit, a story where the protagonist explicitly travels back to the memory of the MCI itself, reinforcing that 1985 date, even the game version. And to push it even further, it's even told to us outside of the franchise itself, with the official Dead by Daylight collab, containing a logo for a Freddy's from 1985, which, if you aren't aware, Dead by Daylight realms are created based on the memories of the Taken. Usually in FNAF we don't get much confirmed, so to have the 1985 date repeated to us at least 5 times, as well as an extra 6th if you include outside media, it seems pretty solidified. Speaking of the first ever Freddy's location though, we can actually infer that it's the same building that ends up becoming the FNAF 1 Freddy's. We know this due to not only the newspapers about the MCI appearing in this building, the closure of the FNAF 1 location stating that the MCI took place there many years ago, implying it's the same building, building, but there's also the fact that FNAF 3 tells us that they discontinued use of the hidden safe rooms after the MCI occurred in 1985. Yet we actually see in the later Follow Me minigames from FNAF 3 that the FNAF 1 building actually has a safe room, meaning that it's an older location being reused. This makes sense given that Follow Me is basically a recreation of the MCI, luring the kids to the back room for Afton to take their life away. Funnily enough, Henry's insanity speech in FNAF 6 directly tells us that this is the case as well, by stating that
he lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks. He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there. Again. He overpowered them. Again. And he robbed them of the only thing that they had. Again.
Confirming that the safe room in the FNAF 1 Freddy's, where they get lured to and destroyed in Follow Me, was the exact same place they were lured to and killed originally in 1985. And to further that, not only do they later find Springtrap in the safe room, but they also find vintage audio tapes from the phone guy, specifically training the employees of not the FNAF 1 Freddy's, but the 1985 Freddy's instead, which it would make perfect sense for those old tapes to still be there if they were simply being kept in the same building. Although not only is the building the same, but so are the designs of the animatronics. In the interactive novel The Week Before, which explicitly takes place, well, the week before FNAF 1, the phone guy himself specifically thinks, quote, "The brown bear is dapper as always in his black top hat and bow tie." You're glad they restored the vintage animatronic with his classic look, meaning that his FNAF 1 design is the same restored classic design from the first location. This also makes sense with the fact that Help Wanted, with Pizza Party, which is a direct recreation of the MCI, Into the Pit, not only with the animatronics themselves, but also through the scrapbook cutouts and more, and Secret of the Mimic, with the prototypes underground, directly show us that the first ever 1985 Freddy's used the same designs of the classics from FNAF 1. Speaking of Into the Pit, we're even shown the arcades with the animatronic faces on them in the 1985 Freddy's. That's a specific pull from FNAF 3 with its arcade machines in the main gameplay, that also just happen to have the designs of the classics on them as well, to further push this main idea. Dead by Daylight also reiterating it all with the classic designs in the 85 location. That's not all the evidence for that though, as within FNAF 2 we see not only the classic designs being used for plushies that seemingly came from the original Freddy's, but we also see dream cutscenes that take place at that older Freddy's, showcasing the classic designs as well as the same dining area from FNAF 1. This exact framing being referenced with the Help Wanted and Secret of the Mimic endings, both using the classic designs for the originals, further connecting both the 1985 designs and location to the FNAF 1 designs and location. The FNAF movie even has the Freddy's where the MCI are killed be the exact same one as the one that Mike works at later in the timeline, even with fixed versions of the animatronics such as Foxy. If all of that is not enough, not only is Ultimate Custom Nights map the FNAF 1 map, implying this location is based off the memory of where the one you should not have killed died, likely from the MCI, but Secret of the Mimic's prototype Freddy's is literally just the FNAF 1 map as well to further this idea. And the first Help Wanted also gives us the cherry on top, with the Faz Queen for the first ever Freddy's featuring the face of a FNAF 1 designed Freddy. The whole theory then finalized with the FNAF 1 animatronics all using Endo 01s, despite us seeing these in gameplay after the Endo 02s were used in 87. All in all, meaning the FNAF 1 Freddy's is literally just a redone 1985 Freddy's, with the same designs and in the same building due to the company's lack of money by this point in time. Either way, we of course later know that the murderer was a man named William Afton, the name taken from the novels at first, but later reiterated in FNAF 6's credits, who is represented in these games as the purple guy, representing him moving in the shadows, as confirmed by Scott, and who was wearing a yellow rabbit costume, Spring Bonnie, to commit these murders using a pizza knife, as confirmed in Dead by Daylight. We learn in the future installments that Spring Bonnie and his stage partner Fredbear, who later becomes who we call in this game Golden Freddy, came from a previous establishment, Fredbear's Family Diner, and the two were what's called Springlock suits. If you're new to the franchise, these Springlock suits had the average animatronic performance mode, but they also had an additional suit mode where employees could simply insert and firmly turn a hand crank to eventually fasten all the Springlocks into place. space, in order to make enough room for employees to actually enter the costume and entertain within. Although the Springlocks don't react too well to water and moisture, so if you're inside one and someone spills their water on you, let's just say it'll be a long day for you. Not only that, but these Springlock suits had the ability to free roam the building during the day when in animatronic mode, walking to
where the children are for maximum entertainment / crowd pleasing value.
Although FNAF 2 mentions how the toy animatronics could also free roam, so could the classics? Well, within FNAF 3, we also learned that the safe rooms were hidden from all of the animatronics' digital map layouts, which we then see undeniably includes the classics within the Follow Me minigames, where none of them are able to roam into the safe room. This in itself directly implies that the classics could free roam. Otherwise, why would the classics even need a digital map layout within their programming that the company then has to literally hide a room from so that they don't enter it if they were just never programmed to move off stage anyways? The later game Into the Pit further reiterates this, giving us a scrapbook all about the classics from 85 that Oswald is currently dealing with, featuring technicians noting that the classics could move off stage, with quotes such as, "Chica will bring stolen food to the pile and eat it," and AI programming causing Freddy to stalk partygoers by guarding doors. But the cherry on top is a rare death minigame seen in FNAF 2, Foxy Go Go Go. Within, we directly see that Foxy can come out of Pirate's Cove and is clearly able to move around while the kids are partying in the original Freddy's location, as the minigame takes place around the MCI. Although, do you notice any underlying pattern with that specific mechanic? Think about it for a second. Foxy is directly heading from where he set idle, towards the sound of children partying for higher entertainment value. Does that wording help ring any bells?
The animatronics are set to turn and walk towards sound cues. This is an easy and hands-free approach to making sure the animatronics stay where the children are for maximum entertainment / crowd pleasing value.
That's right. It seems that this minigame shows to us that the classics had the exact same programming as the Springlocks had, while in animatronic mode, just without the ability to be turned into a wearable suit, of course. Phone Guy even hints at this within FNAF 2, stating,
"The robots were never given a proper night mode, so when it gets quiet, they think they're in the wrong room, so then they go try to find where the people are."
Which perfectly mirrors this exact same go to where the children are directive, which we're theorizing all of these animatronics have. This idea works pretty well, especially because the classics not being able to free roam makes no sense, considering the variations before, during, and after them were able to. So with the classics having map layouts, a room being blocked from them, mentions of their free roam movements in the past, as well as Foxy Go 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 directly showing us the mechanic in action, it seems that the classics could indeed free roam during the day, just like the toys could later do better, but both using the same directive from the original Springlock animatronics. But besides the mechanics of the suit he was wearing, and before getting into the main 5 children we all know by this point, we learn through the newest in-universe book, Ticket to Fun, that an 8-year-old named Timmy Douglas was actually a failed MCI victim. Quote, "The games at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza are the best. Bonnie even helped me win one time. He wanted me to go into a dark closet for a special prize, but I had to go open presents," which in itself tells us that the children William killed were not targeted or specifically planned in any way, like some believe. They were just random kids. And this same book also further proves that the classic designs were used in the old location too, as shown most clearly with the fixed Foxy being the design of Classic Foxy, and Classic Freddy shown on the page about the origins of Fazbear Entertainment, as well as the whole book featuring stuff from all the Freddy's locations, yet never showing any other designs but the classics. Moving on though, and we later learn more information on the main 5 children that William successfully lured and murdered, starting with their names, which we learnt due to the gravestones at the end of FNAF 6 containing said names, and then cross-referencing those names with the heads shown off in the bad ending of FNAF 3, in order to get the corresponding possessors. This method was just a theory for a while, but did actually get confirmed, through both the Fazbear Fright story Coming Home, and the week before, both having Susie possessing Chica, the week before also having Jeremy possessing Bonnie, as well as surprisingly Dead by Daylight with the Freddy hat add-on directly stating Gabriel trusted the wrong grown-up. Now he's the star of the show, which these add-ons also horrifically implied that the MCI were begging for their lives, with a party hat add-on stating the party never ends, no matter how much they beg. These party hats also connecting to Into the Pit, showing us the MCI were wearing said party hats when they got murdered. While we could then infer that Fritz was Foxy, the name behind the Golden Freddy spirit was a little harder to figure out, as it was covered by grass in that final image, and so we needed to use the survival logbook in order to figure out the name, which coincidentally had a gravestone with my name covering it. As you probably know by now, there were numbers throughout this logbook that were either misplaced or noted as important, which ended up being used as coordinates in a word search to get the name Cassidy. The final novel, The Fourth Closet, then featured an MCI child named Cassidy, and Scott later talked about how a Cassidy screenplay draft for the FNAF movie was the most accurate screenplay, both seemingly confirming the name Cassidy is indeed canon, although naming aside, and we can actually figure out the exact order these 5 were lured and murdered, mainly due to the later game Ultimate Custom Night having Susie directly tell us,
"I was the first. I have seen everything."
Meaning she was the first killed in the group. Double confirmed with Susie's death minigame containing a song titled 4 Bits to the Left, which starting at the 5th and final kill and then going 4 down would of course lead you to the first. Then we can use a combination of both the birthday balloons in Security Breach, as well as the pizza party level in Help Wanted to actually get the rest of the order. The 1 being blank because we already know the first is Susie for Chica, the purple 2 signifying Jeremy dying second for Bonnie, the blank 3 signifying we should already know who the third is, which then perfectly correlates to Pizza Party showing us Gabriel being stuffed into Freddy, while both Chica and Bonnie are already stuffed, while Foxy's still available, the red 4 then signifying Fritz dying fourth for Foxy, and then finally the golden 5 signifying Cassidy dying last for Golden Freddy. While people may disagree because of Help Wanted 2's gravestones, I should note now that I don't think those graves are actually telling us the death order, so I'm not going to be using them here to figure out said order, and I'll explain why it's not showing us the order properly in the Help Wanted 2 video itself. But either way, not only can we get the exact order, but we can also figure out some more information on each and every MCI victim. Starting with the first, Susie, and we learn through FNAF 6's Fruity Maze minigame that her dog has been missing, although we then learn it got run over one day as showcased in that very minigame. We can infer due to the imagery of Spring Bunny digging something, as well as another minigame in that same game featuring William driving past a random mound, that William was the one who ran over the dog, explaining how he somehow knows about her dog's death and uses it against her despite this assumedly being their first time meeting. Some have often theorized that the dog ends up possessing Mr. Cupcake, and I actually think that instead of the dog itself directly possessing it, Mr. Cupcake is still possessed by Susie, but specifically by her memories and the agony of her dog and its death. This explains why in certain installments like FNAF 4, Help Wanted, or the movie, it often acts as a seemingly separate entity while still being a part of Chica. Although finally we also learn within Coming Home that Susie's mother is a woman named Patricia, and she also has a sister named Samantha. Then we move to Jeremy, and unfortunately we don't have much on him, and he doesn't even exist in the novel trilogy. Although in Security Breach, the comedy bot down in the Fazbear Theatre tells a rather interesting story, quote,
"Aren't parents the worst? Any of you kids have parents. Don't you hate it when your parents take you somewhere fun and abandon you? They're all like, I guess if I dump little Jeremy off at his favorite pizzeria before I move to Aruba, that makes me a good parent."
Which possibly implies that Jeremy was abandoned at Freddy's by his parents, maybe not even by accident judging by the story, causing Jeremy to likely look for help and being how William lures him in. We can then move straight to Gabriel, who we can actually infer was a birthday host and was lured during his own party. Not only does Pizza Party directly have us organizing the Freddy Kids birthday party, even with the specific flavor of cake that he gets to eat and everything, which speaking of, my audience has decided that the cake flavor he picks is chocolate, so that's why I'll say that in my final timeline. But it can also be inferred from unlocking his spirit for Happiest Day only after completing the Balloon Boys Air Adventure minigame, which is of course filled with balloons, birthday balloons, and it would also make sense with him being the star of the show and getting the main role, which actually seems to make the other animatronics give him a higher importance, and possibly even be scared of him as shown off in the week before. Quote, "Freddy is missing from the stage, but Bonnie and Chica are back there already. Even Foxy is still hiding out in Pirates Cove. This night has been feeling off, and you reason it's because it's the first night Freddy has gone wandering. It's possible that the other animatronics are lying low tonight to give give him some room to explore. They're not afraid of him, are they? As well as FNAF 1 having him be the one shown when in the same camera as somebody else, and being the one to jump scare you when the power goes out, even if the others are already inside. Either way, we then move on to Fritz, who we don't know too much about, although the minigame completed to unlock his spirit is the Stage 01 minigame, where kids are distracted by watching a performance as one is eventually taken, which coincidentally correlates to how Spring Bonnie lures away an MCI child in the FNAF movie intro. The animatronic they're watching also just happens to be Foxy too, and this is also similar to the novel trilogy where a kid named Michael Brooks is also lured away while the other kids are watching a performance. Either way, we then have the final kid, Cassidy, who we can actually infer was killed most brutally and likely due to the Springlocks within Golden Freddy, who we later learn was the Springlock suit in both the Fazbear Fright story The New Kid, as well as Ultimate Custom Night connecting Golden Freddy and Fredbear as one and the same, and then Into the Pit reiterating this fact. Cassidy dying by Springlocks is also actually hinted at with Ultimate Custom Night, directly showing us Golden Freddy twitching away into the darkness, exactly like William was twitching within Springtrap in the trailer for FNAF 3, as well as that same game featuring an analogy of the MCI, which shows the methods getting progressively more violent as they went on, leaving the final to be the worst. Not only that, but the story I mentioned, The New Kid, also has kids being put into and dying inside the Golden Freddy suit due to the Springlocks, which if the Fazbear Fright series is meant to fill in blanks in the original story, then Cassidy dying by Springlocks would be what we can infer from that story. We also know that Cassidy is most likely a girl, due to multiple sources. First of all, the laugh paired with specifically Golden Freddy is that of a little girl as heard here. This laugh is then slowed down to make it sound deeper and more so like a boy laughter for regular Freddy, which makes sense considering Gabriel, his possessor, is a boy. Then the novel trilogy has a black-haired MCI victim named Cassidy be, well, a girl, which the logbook then just happens to contain a girl being given cake by the puppet, with a happiest day phrasing above it. The imagery clearly referencing the Golden Freddy kid being given cake in that very minigame. Which, speaking of, in Return to the Pit where we see the MCI, a girl with curly hair just happens to be the one who gets her cake last, which not only makes sense considering Cassidy's name actually is derived from an Irish surname meaning curly haired, but can actually be cross-referenced with The New Kid where they look inside the Golden Freddy suit, only to find someone's body with curly hair inside. Hair that just happens to be black just like Cassidy's in the novel trilogy and assumedly the logbook. All in all, it seems that Cassidy is indeed a girl, although to be completely fair, we'll see if this conversation changes the other direction if the Golden Freddy boy in the movie gets called Cassidy, but for now I'll be going with Cassidy being a girl. Either way, there's of course more to Golden Freddy itself, but we'll talk more about that in FNAF 4 when the crying child comes into the story and likely becomes a second spirit within it, and that's everything we can gather about the MCI. Well, besides the fact that within FNAF 1 itself, the lore surrounding the MCI actually contains Scott's infamous one confirmed retcon that people have been theorizing about for years, which is where it states that a suspect was convicted for the murders. Although, as you probably know, this does not make sense with what we know now in modern day, as in every single game past FNAF 1. We mainly know this isn't the case thanks to Help Wanted stating that nothing related to Fazbear Entertainment was ever proven in a court of law, which is specifically what must happen for a conviction to occur. And of course, the MCI is the biggest incident haunting their company through the decades, and what that very game was making fun of. People argue that maybe someone else got convicted, which even if we ignore the Help Wanted quote for some reason, Henry specifically states in FNAF 6 that he knows about William's evil, implying that it's similar to the novel trilogy where everyone knows the murderer is William, but they just can't charge him due to the lack of evidence. Not only that, but William being the main suspect also explains why he goes under a disguise in FNAF 2 as a night guard, since, well, he's the main suspect and the toy animatronics are specifically programmed to go after criminals. Not only that, but every single game and timeline shows that William gets away with it due to hiding the bodies, and that no one was arrested in his place. This is also all doubled down in the Silver Eyes, by directly referencing this very charged and convicted newspaper by specifically mentioning that William couldn't even be charged due to the disappearances of the bodies. People have theorized that how long the animatronics have been around for, with the quote,
"If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too.
Maybe the retcon instead, and it's usually seen as the if not the conviction line, it's definitely that, since those two are the strongest options for the retcon. Although not only do I believe that to be a simple over-exaggeration on the phone guy's part, but Secret of the Mimic came out swinging and showed us that the classics existed way back in 1979, R&D where they're housed, specifically being made in 1975. And due to Fiona having a part of it, the idea for them existed before 1973 as well, meaning that the classics have indeed existed for around about 20 years in total by the time of FNAF 1. Also further proving that there was no possible way to have noticed it to be retconned back in Sister Location when the post was made, despite Scott stating that the retcon was noticeable and some have. So with the only real opposing contender out the way, this is why you'll notice that most theorists don't ever use this suspect convicted line in their timelines or theories, or simply just forget about it, as well as why I will avoid it in my upcoming timeline video too, as it was most likely Scott's admitted one retcon. So now that truly is everything we know about the MCI after all. But don't worry, we'll talk about the why and William's motivations and characterization in a future video when the time comes. Now, before we talk timelines, let's move on to stuff within the game itself, such as Mike being instructed by the phone guy about what to do on the job, who is going through his final week at the time of the recordings himself. We later learn in the interactive novel The Week Before that the phone guy's name is Ralph, and that he actually has a daughter named Copiella. We also learn within the book that Ralph truly loves the Freddy's franchises, to the point he even denies or downplays the situations that he's put in, which we see in FNAF 2. This makes the fact that he unfortunately dies at the end of his week even sadder, and we can hear through his final call that he's actually surrounded by all 4 of the animatronics before Golden Freddy goes in for the kill. Although on our final night we get another phone call. This one being a distorted and backwards excerpt from the book Autobiography of a Yogi, taken from chapter 8, about the possibility of metal being able to contain life. This is a reference to what later becomes known as Remnant, which is basically the fancy way of explaining possession in FNAF, as the element is created when any metal, so the endoskeletons, is possessed by a soul. This metal can then be melted down into a malleable liquid, which can then be used to transfer Remnant from one object into another. When Remnant is used on a person instead, not only can that person interact with Ghost as shown off in the 4th closet, and some believe Follow Me, but they also gain a healing ability, whether it's healing the body shown off in Sister Location, or going as far as to cure cancer and other diseases, shown off in the anthology books. But either way, the reason the phone call repeats this excerpt may actually be because Ralph ends up possessing the phone itself with this exact method, as we know that he dies while recording his final message, which may mean that his soul could have latched onto that piece of metal and possessed it, also explaining his random presence in Ultimate Custom Night, despite being the only human and seemingly non-supernatural entity on the roster. This game is also where Ralph introduces us to the infamous
Bite of 87,
which we learn more about in the next game, so remember to subscribe now so you don't miss that video. Either way, let's now talk about the elephant in the room. What year does FNAF 1 take place? This has been a debate for a decade, more recently coming back as a topic due to the interactive novel The Week Before, giving us some clues on the time frame. So let's begin investigating. As you probably know, by taking the amount we're paid on night 5, $120, and dividing it by the 30 hours we work over 5 nights, we get a wage of $4 per hour, which wasn't ever the exact minimum wage during any specific year, but due to Scott making FNAF 2 have the exact and accurate minimum wage of 1987, due to this very method being used for FNAF 1, it does seem like it was almost definitely meant to imply that it was basically minimum wage, which Scott did confirm that it was meant to be shortly after the game's initial release, and so likely places the game between 1991, where it was $3.80, and 1996, the year before it moved too far away to $4.75. This leaves us with 6 years that FNAF 1 could take place, and luckily The Week Before answers which one. Within the book, we learn that Ralph has never brought Copiella to Freddy's, even on Bring Your Child to Work Day, which most people skim past but is actually quite important, as Bring Your Child to Work Day was first celebrated officially on the 26th of March in 1993, this eliminating 1991 and 1992, leaving only 4 years, although throughout the book, we actually learn that Ralph takes Copiella to school after each of his shifts. After night 1, point it mentions that, quote, getting your 11-year-old daughter Copiella up and ready for school is more challenging than anything Freddy Fazbear's Pizza could throw your way. And after night 5, he asks, shouldn't you be in school? To which she replies, you said I could stay home today. Which shows us that the 5 nights is a regular Monday to Friday work week, with her going to school for 4 days and then staying home on the Friday. Further back with Copiella saying before he goes to night 6, this week almost killed you, meaning the week hasn't crossed over yet. We can then cross-reference this with the FNAF 1 paycheck, stating that the 5th night, so the Friday, is the 12th of November, so night 1 was the 8th, and therefore puts Ralph's first shift, the Monday before Mike's, on Monday the 1st of November. The only year out of our remaining 4 options to have the 1st of November be on a Monday is 1993. As you probably know, 1993 was the date that was already theorized by MatPat from Game Theory back in his first ever theory about the game, and it's been the date that's been mutually accepted by a large majority of the community for the past decade. So besides just the week before, is there anything else hinting at us being correct about that date originally? Well, not only did Scott make the following game use the same wage method MatPat used, almost as if he was implying the theory was correct, but for this we must talk about a future game, FNAF 3, as their dates back each other up and are closely related, since back when the game first released, the 1993 date was used to theorize that FNAF 3 takes place in 2023, funnily enough the year of the rabbit, due to it taking place 30 years after FNAF 1, which we know due to the source code leading up to the game stating Five Nights at Freddy's 30 years later, only one, meaning it takes place 30 years after the first game itself, as well as the description of the game noting that a Freddy's closure leads directly into the story of FNAF 3, which we then just happen to have the Follow Me minigames, that perfectly recreate that description, playing within the closed down FNAF 1 Freddy's that leads directly into the story of FNAF 3. This is then even stated in the Ultimate Guide as a fact, not even in the theory section, with a quote, it's been 30 years since the last Freddy Fazbear's Pizza shut down, which makes extra sense considering the first Freddy's eventually reopened with the FNAF 1 location, meaning it wasn't abandoned and hadn't closed its doors, a saying most commonly used for a permanent closure, until the FNAF 1 location closed. But either way, following that theory, Scott then decided to reference that very year in FNAF 6, with Henry's audio log being titled 223, the audio log where Henry starts investigating, talking about the past, and organizing his plan. Which feel free to disagree, but I personally take that as Scott confirming we were indeed correct about the 2023 date, and therefore 1993 as well. Some will say that 223 doesn't mean 2023, but not only do I think Scott knows better than to choose that specific number in a game that's intentionally meant to clean up the story, but the full file name actually tells us that it's meant to be 2023 in itself. Think about it, HRY223 is the full title, HRY standing for Henry, which if you notice, takes the first and then the last 2 letters from the real name for the file name, exactly like 223 standing for 2023 would be taking the first and then last 2 numbers from the real number for the file number. That process in itself helps us figure out what the other portion of the file name is, no matter if you start decoding it knowing HRY is Henry first, or that 223 is 2023 first. I've also seen people say that the ... must mean it's not the end of the file name. However, that's not actually true and is honestly misinformation, as ... is also commonly used when you're installing, playing, loading, whatever actioning a file to. I want that to be clear. ... does not exclusively mean there's more to a file name, especially not what's for only a 6-character title. The Ultimate Guide then backs this up directly. But besides HRY223, in the Fazbear Fright story what we found, we're introduced to a night guard at Fazbear's Fright, the FNAF 3 location, who just happens to be 23 years old. The other workers also being 23 too, yet another reference to that date. And speaking of books, the survival logbook also contains an almost 3-decade time skip between the FNAF 1 Freddy's and whenever Mike is writing in it, which is heavily implied to be FNAF 3, which we'll talk more about the logbook in the FNAF 3 video itself. Although before we can actually figure out that exact time skip, we just happen to put a 9 and a 3 together to get our final amount, a direct reference to 1993, and also referencing that date leading to our FNAF 3 date. Not only all of that, but Into the Pit is heavily theorized to take place in the 2020s, most likely 2020 itself, due to the graphic novel adaptation, specifically adding a new part with Oswald mentioning a movie called Zendralic's 2020, a reference to Godzilla 2000, and so 2020 likely meaning the year of release. The official in-universe Jeff's Pizza website leaked to have logs dated March 23rd, 2020, October 27th, 2020, etc. Megacat Studios' anniversary post having the in-game calendar have August 8th on a Saturday, which the closest surrounding years that's happened is in 2020 and 2026, as well as the game having a character called VTuber Fan who references the VTuber Gorgura, who specifically started in the year 2020. This is all important to this discussion, because Into the Pit actually takes place prior to FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, as we see the same arcade cabinets, paper pals, random drawings and images, and more memorabilia that were all eventually taken from this location to Fazbear's Fright, as well as Trash of the Gang plus Helpy appearing in random dumpsters in modern day, that were eventually taken for the Dumpster Diver Weekly catalogue in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. Whether Into the Pit is or isn't in the game timeline is a big question that we honestly don't really have to tackle, since it doesn't really impact the overall story in any way. But whether it's parallels or in continuity, this would be directly hinting to us that FNAF 3 and FNAF 6 indeed take place within the 2020s, which is specifically solvable by using FNAF 1's theorized year of 1993, and reinforces this very theory that they take place in 2023. Something else to add to the conversation is also the fact that Scott Cawthon himself has actually gone on record to say, you know, when I released the first game over a year ago, I was amazed at how quickly everyone found every bit of lore and story. Then the same happened with Part 2. Fans and YouTubers dug in and found everything. Game Theory did an incredible video on Part 2, getting almost everything right. Then Part 3 came out, and once again the story was uncovered by the community. It seemed that there was nothing I could hide. This statement seems to tell us that we as a community, mainly through Game Theory's videos, as mentioned, was able to uncover all the lore from these games, which would of course include the years that FNAF 1 and FNAF 3 take place, which would be backed up with him later stating that every question raised from FNAF 1 to 4 was definitively solvable. And at the time of these posts, everyone was on the same page that the games took place in 1993 and 2023 respectively. There's some smaller things too, such as Steelwool Studios later doing guest sketch teasers, with FNAF attached on only a few of them. One of those exclusive ones featured Andre the Giant, who unfortunately died in 1993, and Metal Sonic, who made his debut in 1993 as well, which the year of 1993 is the only thing relating those two things together, or even with the unused FNAF AR emails that directly use the 1993 date twice, while they and other emails go unused for an unknown reason, so we can't really use them as big evidence. But I do think it's interesting that it also mentions that the location apparently opened in 1988, as this coincidentally correlates to the week before, stating that Ralph brought Copiella to work to meet the animatronics when she was 7, which, since she's turning 12 in December, of what we're assuming to be 1983, would then mean that she would have gone to a Freddy's location in 1988. Happy coincidence, or a hint that Scott turned the unused email canon? Either way though, with all of this information in mind, I'm still as sure as I've always been for the past decade that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, and also that FNAF 3 takes place in 2023, so remember this solution for the future FNAF 3 video. Last but not least, we should also talk about the main protagonist of FNAF's original story, Michael Afton, here under Mike Schmidt, which due to the new movie, splitting these Mikes into two separate characters, has caused some confusion about whether they're truly one character, although luckily for us, the security logbook confirms this to be the case, with the same Mike who later works at Sister Location also noting to have the nightmares from FNAF 4, which within contains a call from the phone guy from FNAF 1, therefore linking the two together, which Sister Location itself doubles down on with the private bunker, Michael being introduced to us as just Mike, and also the music for his speech containing the motif from the Toreador March from the first game too. So with that and more, Michael Schmidt is indeed Michael Afton. We learn a lot more about him later in the story, but a question this game proposed was the reason that Mike was hallucinating so much, from the posters and the cameras to even the thoughts in his mind. We've assumed it since FNAF 1's release, but most clearly shown in the FNAF movie, it appears that the reason for this is actually because the building itself is alive, aka haunted. Within the movie, when the spirits are angry and vengeful, the entire building just decides to start collapsing. and it's also further hinted at with later installments, such as Security Breach's Ruin DLC, where a bunch of objects move around and fall over for no purpose. Not only that, but it's even mentioned in the character encyclopedia, when talking about Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, quote, "Never build anything over the ruins of a haunted building, kids." And with all of the spirits and agony in this game as well as the following games, which also have a ton of hallucinations and ghostly shenanigans too, it makes a lot of sense that there's simply a lot of supernatural energy throughout the buildings that causes them to basically appear alive. I truly don't think there's a larger reason than just that it's supernatural stuff happening, and at most you could extend it to being because of agony. Basically, to define it simply, as we learn through multiple sources, mainly through the Fazbear Fright series, which the new book Ticket to Fun seemingly confirmed that agony uses the same logic in the games too, by having UV lights reveal hidden messages based around agony, which directly mirrors the Fright's epilogues, explaining that agony can be viewable by turning out all the lights and using a blue light too. If there's a large amount of emotional agony generated due to a tragedy or something similar, that agony can actually infect a nearby object, or in this case a building, and cause it to be haunted without needing a specific spirit attached. This agony in extreme cases can even go on to manifest itself into an agony being, which we'll see in the later games. And to try and differentiate the two through these videos, I'll try specifically calling animatronics with actual spirits within them as possessed, while calling supernatural entities caused by agony as haunted. But as you can probably tell, FNAF 1 doesn't give us too much lore on its own, and a lot of this video was using the later games to expand upon the characters and events it simply introduced. Although we can solidify for my final timeline that besides what we're directly told/shown, the FNAF 1 Freddy's use the same designs and buildings as the first original Freddy's. Exactly who, what, when, where the missing children's incident occurs, what detail to ignore that was retconned from the lore, that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, and also FNAF 3 in 2023, that the buildings throughout the games are also haunted, causing all the hallucinations and ghostly shenanigans, and finally a clear understanding on how Remnant and Agony work in this universe. So, with every aspect of FNAF 1 answered, we can now move on to FNAF 2, to try and solve everything within it, coming next month. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, as well as all the other FNAF 1 content coming this month. A big shout out to all my channel members. Become one today. Please be respectful to everyone when discussing what are simply theories, and I really hope you all enjoyed and have a great day/night. Bye!